and heroic work, really, when it comes to it. So Alfie thrived on this work. Soon after that, he got very involved in traveling around Ireland, spreading the Legion, trying to spread the good news and start Presidia all around the country, and he had tremendous success. Even, he's a very young man. He's only 18 or 19 years of age now at this time. So he gets very involved. Frank Duff gets to know him, and you see in this slide here a picture of Alfie with Frank Duff, and he's with a priest, Father Michija, if I'm pronouncing that right, from Venezuela. And I guess that's probably just before Alfie was about to go as an envoy to South America. So we can see there he's already beginning to climb the ranks, as it were, of apostleship, getting more and more involved. So Alfie was delighted with this work. So you can imagine what the Christian brothers must have been thinking, look what we let go, And Frank Duff says that if it were not for the fact that they had let him go, he might have missed his true vocation, So that's true. So now, July 1953, Alfie, with another gentleman by the name of Seamus Grace. Seamus Grace is still alive today. Seamus is just two people to the left there of Alfie. Joaquina Lucas is on Alfie's right, and then Seamus Grace is just behind her there. But they went off to South America, and their first stop was Bogota in Colombia, and they were sent as envoys. Now, an envoy was simply thrown in to the deep end, into this country, and away you go, spread the Legion, off you go. And they might have had one or two recommendations. Father Michija there on the right as well, he may well have provided some letters of reference to get them going and get them started. But really it was up to the envoys themselves to take the initiative and try to begin Presidia and speak to bishops and speak to priests. Now, in case you think that it was easy back then, it's no more easier than it is now. Imagine now trying to, how difficult it is to start up even one Presidium now. Exactly the same back then. And in South America, a vast, vast continent, you're more aware of this than we would be in Ireland, in our small little country. Many Irelands would fit into South America. Vast continent. Where would they begin? Where would they start? How would they even approach it? And some of the history of South America is worth reading up on that history and seeing how the Spanish conquistadors and the missionaries from Spain and Portugal certainly established the faith in South America, but one error they made certainly was not to allow native clergy in South America back in those early days, 1700s, 1800s. They never allowed any local people become priests or religious, I think, for that matter too. And this really had a devastating effect, because by the time the 19th century had come, the influences of the French Revolution had moved across the ocean to South America, and the native people wanted their countries back. They wanted their independence. And to eliminate Spanish rule and Portuguese rule meant to eliminate anything associated with those two countries, and therefore to try to eliminate religion too. And so there was a great purge of religious and clergy, especially missionaries from South America, and that left the continent bereft, really, of religious and priests. And it made the faith weaken drastically. And so this effect, and there was great hatred from the more liberal new governments against the church and against the clergy particularly. So Alfie and Seamus, along with Joaquina and other envoys, arrived to this situation, a lot of antipathy towards the church, a lot of liberalism, a lot of violence. Communism was taking root very strongly at that time too, the 1950s. If you remember a little of your history, how in China the communists were sweeping across China at the same time that Alfie was in South America, the 1950s, and purging China of all Catholicism and anything associated with Christianity at all. So much the same atmosphere was there in South America, and it made it very difficult to try to spread the faith. So Alfie began it. He had no Spanish, really, not much at all, and he arrived in July, and by November he had a crash course in Spanish and was fluent enough to begin his work. And so in November 1953 he began in Ecuador and began a systematic visitation of all the dioceses, and through at least one bishop who supported him, began his work. Now, it was a pretty mammoth task to try to keep going, and he ended up going from one country to another and back again. It's almost mind-boggling the amount of traveling that he ended up doing. But this bishop in Ecuador introduced him to the bishops' conference, and then the bishops themselves all realized the value of the Legion and the success of the Legion and the work the locals were doing. The local people themselves were thrilled at the idea of now being empowered to spread the good news themselves, and they took to it fervently. And Alfie, through his own personality and his own demeanour, he won them over gradually, and he set up Presidia at a phenomenal rate. Just, you know, you'd be talking, in the first fortnight, I think he set up something like 24 Presidia. And he just drove on across the continent in the same way, setting up curia anywhere and everywhere. So, in Ecuador, this is the farewell party they held for Alfie, and you can see the smiling faces and the bishop in the background there. Obviously, he's made a huge impact in a very short time. So in a matter of months, he had set up curia in various dioceses around Ecuador and done tremendous work. His crash course at the beginning was with Joaquina Lucas, who had come to South America in 1949. She was the first envoy. She was from the Philippines, and she had come to South America, and she trained him in and then left him off. Her territory was more in Peru. Seamus Grace then moved off to Venezuela and some of the northern countries there too. And then Alfie started moving across Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, and even Brazil. And that's, I mean, Brazil is as big as Europe. You know, I mean, this is a massive continent, and he just kept traveling and moving on from one place to another. And really, his gentleness, I think, won the day. And then the systematic approach of the Legion of Mary, once he'd set it up, he left it to run itself, and then he'd write back to them, or he'd come back and visit and check out to see how they were doing and guide them and direct them. And the native South Americans, whatever country he was in, themselves then learned the system and themselves became envoys and helped Alfie along the way that way. So Ecuador was his first stop. Certainly by the 25th of March 54, you can see all 9 dioceses in Ecuador now have the Legion. You know, it's quite strong. By autumn 1955, there they visited all the dioceses in Argentina, and then moving on from Bolivia to Paraguay, back to Ecuador and to Argentina. Alfie just working all over the place, extraordinary traveling. I mean, these are thousands of miles, and it's not easy traveling the roads. Back in the 1950s, or he went by air from time to time too. So, just to kind of give you a feel, this is real down-to-earth Legion work. You simply have to roll up your sleeves and get involved and meet the people and get it started. So Joaquina, again, presiding at a Curia meeting in Brazil and getting things going there. In 1955, there was a very important occasion, which was the Eucharistic Congress in Rio de Janeiro. And that brought all the bishops from the various countries in South America together. And it was a huge opportunity to make contacts with the entire continent and to set up and arrange meetings and try to get the Legion known all over the whole continent. And so you have several envoys there together. They met at the Eucharistic Congress in July 1955. Maria Deepin there on the left, she was allocated as an envoy to the Guyanas, French and Dutch Guyana in the north of the continent. Alfie himself, Mary Clerkin, who was together with Joaquina Lucas, did a lot of work in Brazil. And so those 4 envoys tried their best. They worked flat out to meet as many bishops and as many priests as they could at the Eucharistic Congress to get things moving, get things rolling, get things organized. So there's an idea. He's meeting with some of the Monsignors, the Apostolic Envoy in Brazil, and some other priests from around South America. So it really was a very intense time for them, arranging contacts and getting moving.